about to begin. It is our second day of IDEC 2019. How are you feeling this morning? Did you enjoy yesterday? Give me the name of the speaker that you like the most. 1, 2, 3. So I didn't hear those who asked most of the questions. Okay, a couple of housekeeping announcements that I would like to make. We've got so many people who love losing things. We've got a couple of power banks, and we also got glasses that someone lost. We are also asking you to provide us with your valuable feedback. We will really appreciate if you find time to pick up a questionnaire, to give us your feedback about what you like the most, what you would like to see changed, maybe any suggestions that you would like to make, and how you see yourself as participating in our future events. Okay, we shall begin now. We have little time left and we have so much ground to cover. Why we need education in the first place? Why we need school? Branytska actually stole the wind, most of the wind out of her sails yesterday, but this is more of a rhetorical question, a philosophical subject, if you will. We do not know what the future holds, but we seem to know in which direction to move in developing the education sector. I would like to introduce our great panel. These people can talk about education for hours and hours and hours. They bring in a wealth of experience. I will begin by introducing our distinguished panelists. In terms of timing, each speaker will be given 5 minutes to share their thoughts, but it's more, then again, more of a philosophical subject, but we hope that this will actually ignite a spark deep down inside and get people thinking about how to go about answering those important questions. Okay, let's prepare for a mind explosion. Each speaker will be given 5 minutes and this will be followed by a discussion. Yaacov, our ideologist, the mastermind behind democratic education, who founded these conferences that has been held for its 26th time, the person behind the democratic education movement, the founder of the many schools in Israel. Murashev, the former editor of Snob magazine, a person who writes books about the different types of schools that he's come across in different parts of the world. He's actually traveling very extensively. He's visited so many schools. He's looked at the concepts of education. He's looked at the system. So much of inspiration during this panel will be drawn from Sasha's travels. Yasko, you had a chance to enjoy her presentation yesterday. This is a person who constantly brings in new ideas and prepared to develop this world vertically and horizontally, and she knows a lot about non-violent communication and some of the practical tools that could be employed in working with teachers, parents and organizations. She is the founder of Empatia Pro, helping organizations rise to a brand new level of excellence. I would like to introduce to you a person whom I very much look up to in democratic education, Irena, a person whom I respect so much, a person that I can always turn to with the question, why democratic education? Who does it target? How does it really happen? That is the person who knows a lot about this and can cover this subject. A person who's worked at Summerhill, a person who's worked at other schools in different roles, with over 45 years of experience in democratic education, whose graduates have sent their grandchildren to democratic schools. Some of them have. Derry, Hannam. Peter Hartkamp. It's a unique person, and his background is very unique. A life story. One of the most inspiring schools that has opened up in the Netherlands eventually was closed down after 7 years. And then it was embroiled in 32 lawsuits. And his story is not just inspiring. We're gathered here to discuss how challenging, how difficult it is to embrace democratic education, that neither the parents nor the kids, not the state, no one is prepared for that. And this school has gone through quite an ordeal, surviving 32 lawsuits, and it reopened again. You had a chance to meet Henry yesterday, the grandson of Aleksander Neil, the person who founded Summerhill 100 years ago. Aleksander Neil opened the school, and Henry literally grew up within the walls of that school. This is a person who knows how to launch schools. He knows a lot about democratic education, what it's like to be a child being educated in a democratic learning environment, what it's like to work as a teacher, as headmaster. All it takes to practice democratic education. Now Henry is a traveling lecturer, making presentations about democratic education, how to go about opening such schools, how to raise funds and support, and he's been making a very valuable contribution to promoting democratic education. So we will also now partake of his wisdom and have his thoughts about the subject. Thank you. I would also like to indicate that following this short discussion, each and every one of you will take away your own answer to the question. What is my vision? How do I see myself 10, 15 years down the road as a school teacher? Ask yourselves this question, then each and every answer will matter to you. Thank you. Now I'm very honored to now hand over to our speakers. Each will be given a time slot of 5 minutes to share their thoughts. Thank you.
I'm the first. Oh my God. So my 5 minutes has started. Okay. I hoped I would be the last, then I don't have to say anything, because everyone else knows more than me. Yes, democratic education. I want to say just from the history, from the past, what kind of a species are we? What about the present? And then what about the future? And I think as a species, human beings are a learning species. I used to keep sheep. When a baby sheep is born, it stands up and runs away. It knows everything it needs to know. The young human has to do so much learning. And I think play is terribly important for the young human. Education should help the young human to self-actualize, to self-realize their person. And so much of what we are, we have inherited from evolution. We collaborate. We are curious. We like to be competent. We are learning species. Schools do a lot of things, but they're not very good at helping kids with learning. In fact, sometimes I say regular schools are really only good at one thing, which is stopping kids from learning. And I say that as someone who is a head teacher. So in the present, I think we should create schools that develop these learning characteristics in the context of democracy and human rights. And then for the future, it's terribly important that we don't end up in a dystopian future where we are controlled by a few very rich people who control social media. And for this, it's important that schools help children to create their own identity. It doesn't happen in most schools. This seems to be the only way kids will be able to survive a future where there's very little paid employment to give them identity. And if they're going to become independent, self-actualized people, they have to be able to create their own identity. And this is what happens in democratic schools. So we have to change our school systems now. I think it's the most important thing to do. So it's wonderful we have so many people from schools here. I'm so glad you've come. Thank you.
I am for thinking you need to stand. Sorry, I cannot think with sitting. I need to move. No, you can. So, why we need a school? A strong question, because it's without time. We can say why we needed a school in the past, why we need a school today, and what we need to the future. And the idea of schooling, the first time that people begin to think about schooling was, in my knowledge, it's in the 17th century, and the Kisar, I don't know how to say it, of Austria, have a great idea how to build the army. And he bring the idea of schooling, that we prepare people to be soldiers in his army. Later, in the industrial age, we take this idea how to prepare people to work in a factory, how they listen to their job, boss. And build the school like a factory. I think learning was much before. I think from the first time that the human being was here, it was learning. Schooling, it's a very new thing. And I will take you to a meeting that we were in Jerusalem with the 30 Minister of Education of all the CEO in the world. And we meet together and we think about the future of schooling. And I will jump to the end of this meeting. Is the Minister of Education from Argentina summarize. He say 3 days we talk about the future of education. And he say, now I understand that all of us expert how to prepare people, students, to live in the past. Okay, if, for example, he say, the people in Argentina will come for me and say, let's prepare the people, the student to 60. I know to do it. I know to prepare the people, the student of Argentina to 60. But how to prepare the children to the future? I understand that no one of us know. And this is a big question. What we are doing with this schooling. So why we need this school today? Because it was, and we cannot destroy it, and we don't know what to do. How to prepare people to the future? I will give you my picture. I think the major thing that we need school is that we have the ability to meet people that think different than us. This is the major thing that we need school. To meet people that think different than us. If we are meeting only people that think like me, it's a catastrophe school. To meet different people, this is the reason of schooling. Because if we need only to learn, we don't need a school. And if I want to imagine the future of schooling, it's exactly like the co-working place. So it's a co-learning space. It's totally different from what it exists now, democratic schools, because democratic schools it's mixed ages, and I think the future school, it's a mixed generation. It's from 0 to until you died, and it's like a base of your community, that in this base you meet people from different ideas and different options, and then you go out from this to do something, to do your project, and you come to your base. In this place, you have a place that you meet one another face to face, but also you meet online. You can make in this place meeting not only in the time between 8 o'clock in the morning to 12, you can do it 24/7 hours, and I will continue maybe later because I lost my 5 minutes, so thank you.
I think I'm going to follow Yaacov and standing up because it makes it easier to talk. The question we posed is, why do we need schools or why do we need education? And to me, that's totally the wrong question. Because if you say why you will need something, you're already implicitly saying that you need it. And if you look at babies or small children between 0 and 4, they all learn to speak, they all learn to walk, they all learn all the things they need to do. And they learn it by themselves. So why would we put them in a building where others decide for them what to learn? I think human beings are very well equipped to learn by themselves. So I don't think you would need schools in the first place. We started a school in the Netherlands where children could decide for themselves what to do, what to learn, how to learn it, when to learn it. And basically I got this t-shirt and it's in Dutch, so probably nobody can read it. But the name of the school was The Campaign. And the campaign was the high deck at the old sailing ships where the captain sets the course of the ship. And I think that's, for us, was a metaphor of what our school wants to be for students, to provide them with a place where they can decide for themselves where to go and how to go there. So I think if you would need an education or a school, at best I think it would be to provide a place where children can do it for themselves. Because as soon as a collective you start deciding what you need schools for or what you need education for, you will start imposing your ideas on younger people. And I think that's very contrary to learning and developing and deciding for yourself what you want to do. So, thanks.
Cool. Thank you very much. Thank you. I think for me there's a few things. Firstly, what we see in the education system is that we're focusing mainly on the learning element and not the living element. Summerhill School, and I think I would also say within democratic education, we're talking about living just as much as learning. And that's so educating the whole of the child and the emotions. And this is something we're seeing in the state systems is causing a lot of pressure, a lot of emotional damage to children. And this is one of the main things I think we need to change within education. One of the other things which sort of links a little bit to what Yaacov was saying a little bit about talking about the future, how do we prepare people for the future? I would look at that as a different angle and say that our children are the future. So what we need to do is we need to have schools that evolve with humanity and are connected directly to humanity and especially childhood, so that that schools are actually changing with us, because one of the main problems we have within education is we're trying to predict the future, and we can't do that because the future is changing so quickly. So we need to make sure that schools can evolve with natural childhood and with humanity. And as soon as you look at education in that context, it starts to paint a very different picture. Which I think is very important. Instead of creating a system to farm human beings, it doesn't work that way because we'll always be wrong. So yeah, I won't say any more actually, because I think we want to go to questions soon. So that's all. Thank you.
Да, для журналиста, конечно, говорить 5 минут это...
It's such a challenge when a journalist is asked to speak for just 5 minutes. But I will try to squeeze all my wealth of thought into 5 minutes, and I'll pick up from what Henry left off. That's actually what we on our way here. So he said something very important, that it's new kids, but it's the old us, or something like this. I remember when I was in Sweden, and there was a school, and it had a motto or something. The fourth formers of today will begin their careers in 2035. They're going to have their first kids in 2045. They will retire in 2075. This is so powerful, these 3 lines. It basically completely changes our perspective and how we look at education, because school is bound to evolve alongside humanity. So school is the place where you come across people with burning eyes. We are like microbes. This enthusiasm is contagious among us. There was one great teacher, and then he says that you give a child a bicycle, and he or she rides for the whole day. But if you send them to a gym class, the child will be tired within 30 minutes and will give up on this. We've always been, as kids, we always wanted to do something out of bounds. That is the kind of interest that we always discount. We leave this outside the school system. But from what I've experienced, in most cases, we need to remember about very simple things to keep up their interest. I've talked to hundreds of children over the past 2 years, and they've all intimated to me that whenever it's been interesting, it's been something that they've been willing to take in. So one headmaster told me once, there is a direct relationship between what interests a child and how much they know. How interesting they find it and how much they know. In this sea of information that we're surrounded by, and it's so difficult now to keep pace with this information, that teachers in schools should become your navigators, should teach you to handle mass amounts of information, something that adults still could also use some more learning to do better. Thank you. For me, the most profound rethinking of schooling started this April. I shared some of my thoughts during my talk yesterday, but this eye-opener happened to me during a conference on ethical education during an audience with His Holiness the Dalai Lama in Delhi, and he was a keynote speaker. He said something. His Holiness says, my friend, an ecologist, tells me that this planet has 80 years until it dies, because this climate change thing is actually already reached a tipping point. There's very little chance we will succeed in the next 10 years to turn things around. So it's like he sort of joked about this. Look, it's not me. I'm not going to face the music. I'll be gone in 10 years. It's your kids. We have an important choice. We are at an important crossroads. What do we make of this little time as there remains? In harmony or in war and conflict? I don't want to spread doom and gloom and pessimism and all that. I found quite optimistic answers to the question, why go to school? At least to keep this in sight as a guiding light, as something. School should become a micro model, a container for human evolution, and everything that's just been said really ties in with this co-working spaces, places where everyone can come and learn. It's from 0 to 90. And this is something that really resounds in me. It's so important to empower children at a very young age to make their own decisions. I know there's a sociocratic circles. It's something no child is too young to start doing it. Maybe 5, maybe even younger. What there's bound to come a more spiritual path or a more spiritual sense of direction to guide our schooling. I'm not religious. I'm not. I do not profess any paradigm of faith or anything, but it's something that's been increasingly dawning on me, and the questions that start coming up. It's just one denomination of Christianity. It's that man is created in the image of God. So, because God is the creator, so is man. So this is necessarily, this does need to be reflected, mainstreamed throughout schooling. We also refer to this as creativity. Buddhism claims that the mission is enlightenment. Look at Skolkova's last report on future skills, just fresh off the print. So the first priority is how to manage attention. Emotional literacy, skill number 2. All this very neatly ties in with our ability to rein in our mind and what technologies and practices could we possibly avail ourselves of. So the things that really make us human in this modern world. And this is what we need to integrate into the education sector to support human evolution and to find some answers to those global challenges that we are increasingly faced with as we rediscover man's mission on planet Earth. Thank you. Our speakers have been very succinct. I know that each and every one of them could talk for whole days. Now, we now would like to throw it open for you to ask questions to our distinguished panelists. Can I ask someone to help us pass the mic around? Thank you. Okay, while I'm walking to Honda, it's education actually could work as a new religion for the world, couldn't it? It's as a concept. Why not adopt education as a new religion, as a new faith? So, I apologize for asking maybe a simple question, maybe even. This is something that reminds me of the early days of physics. It all begins with shows. Scientists would show what electricity can do, then Faraday and Maxwell came along. But this reminds me of why are teachers talking about psychology? Because we are at an important turning point in psychology now, that we are still sort of magicians. We showing people tricks. Why I'm not sort of in opposition to what's been expressed, but my question is, where are we in this? What is this a specific question to one of the panelists? So this is a question to everyone. I myself hold a degree in psychology, while I think I'm more of an educator than a psychologist. And what I would like to emphasize, if I got your question right, that psychology as a science about psyche, about the human soul, should become part and parcel of the new educational paradigm that we are creating together. Psychology is the ability to hear, to listen, to feel, to appreciate the needs of other people and your own needs, to live in communion with yourself, to build harmonious connections with the world around us. We all reflected in the eyes of the person in front of us. This is so much part of our emotional and spiritual lines of development. So I would very much welcome the mainstreaming of psychology throughout pedagogics, throughout teaching science, and I would argue that it is already there. It already lives within a democratic education environment. That each democratic educator is a psychologist. Just to share a personal story, there's a school that I've been working with, and I talked to the headmaster, and they told me that he told me that they had actually abandoned. They had actually excluded psychologists because actually everyone is supposed to be a psychologist, be congruent when they work with their children to lend a helping hand to a child when they need it. So a trained psychologist may not be good enough to be a teacher teaching kids. Yeah, let me pick up on this because I could refer back to my own experience and talking to teachers on so many occasions, and I increasingly appreciate the value of psychology because it helps me see the world. Because there's always this risk that the kids will just irritate and vex you, but this classical phrase that it's basically, it does take some time and some effort to reflect on why you're doing this. What's irritating you, or else if a student is not interested, who's to blame for that? And have you done enough to elicit interest? So I understand that a school is also a theatre. As a good psychologist, as they do in a theatrical environment, you need to feel the people in front of you.
I think at the moment we are in a very difficult time for education. Many people here will work in education. Many of you will be parents who send your children into the education system, and it's kind of what we know today. It's very difficult talking or thinking about the future of education because we're changing every single person's life. The way that you teach is going to have to change. The way our normal expectations of how education prepares people for society is going to have to change. And this is a very difficult thing. We all have to be involved. We all have to take and be actively ready to make those changes. What you were saying about within the classroom, the reality is now we need to realize what pressures and what's going wrong with children. Those social and emotional problems that are happening with children, I wouldn't necessarily say we all have to be psychologists. I would say we need to relieve pressure so we don't have to fix the problems. If you give children their childhood and their freedom to be children, and to fulfill their childhood needs, you don't necessarily have to fix problems. The problem we have at the moment is the education system is putting so much pressure onto children that in fact, 90% of the work we have to do is fixing children. And that is where the problem is. So as soon as we start to realize that the education system should be removing pressure, letting children be children, letting them have a childhood, letting them play, letting them do all the wonderful things children need to do, and discover learning and academics and move into the working life when they're ready to, that means straight away you start to remove the pressure and you can then start to have that wonderful teaching, learning relationship with children that we all actually aim for.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with Henry. I think the best way to fix problems is to avoid them to occur in the first place. And to me, psychology is a very immature science. I think currently there's a big research project to redo psychology experiments, and it's found that more than half of the experiments, which are quite determining of how we look at people and the theory of psychology, can't be repeated. They can't get the same results out. So to include a science like that in teaching and education, to me, is more dangerous than it probably can do any good. So I think we should avoid the problems, treating children like human beings, let them make their own choices and don't interfere too much, because then the problems won't get there in the first place.
Wow. I will try to sit. I think I don't understand exactly the question, but I am also psychology, and I want to talk about the connection between psychology and education. I think it's a big gap today between psychology and education. And I think this gap is very dangerous. Because I will say three things that is the basic of psychology, and it's not existing in education. First of all, psychology, we try to understand what is human being, and we don't know what is human being. We have a lot of theory, but we don't know the basic. We are not like education that say, oh, in this time you need to do this and this. Most of what we do in education have no roots in the psychology. Think about the class change in January 2000 and I don't know. Why? We don't have evidence in, we have developed theory, but no one talk about the 1st of January that something changed. So the basic of psychology is unknown. The second basic of psychology, it's clear that we are different. Every one of us is a different. And in education, they are looking like when you are 40, you are the same. In the same class, learn the same things in the same methodology. So this is the second change that it exists between psychology and education. And the third thing is the basic of psychology, that we understand that we don't know ourselves. We don't know what we are doing because a lot is unconscious. That's the unconscious. This is the basic of psychology. And the unconscious is not exist in the education field. It's like, oh, you want to do this and this? I believe that you know. Or I don't do this and this. How you feel in this, I believe you. So it's everything. It's now I'm in a deep, deep conscience. And this is the second gap between education and psychology. And I think if this gap will disappear, something wonderful will happen. Also, not only in psychology, take physiologic, take biologic, and if the gap between all these sciences will connected, we will have better education. Thank you.
I want to avoid, I agree with everything that the other speakers have said, and you've heard enough. But what we need to do, it seems to me, is kids need time and space and freedom in order to learn what they're good at, to discover their interests, to learn to work with other people, and to follow their curiosity. At present, many schools, I have a saying, it's almost impossible to stop young humans from learning, but schools manage it somehow. I say this as someone who was a head teacher. So we need to create schools where kids can develop what they have innately. We know enough about the young human being, and everything now that we learn about the brain supports the ideas of freedom to play, to learn, to follow your own interests, to be curious, to collaborate with other people, and to become good at whatever you want to be good at. One further point, though, that nobody mentions. We are up against capitalist, big business. There's a lot of money to be made from curriculum, and a lot of money made from testing, and a lot of money made from the data that comes from these things. And if we're not careful, our education systems are taken over by big business. This fits with the takeover of social media, etc., etc. And for me, we have to stop this. What we stand for is the opposite of testing, collection of data, and the manipulation of the minds of young people. We have to fight this, I think.
У нас дуже коротке питання. Прям да, і
Ну, власне, у мене запитання до Якова.
A question to Yaakov. Maybe I would also love to hear from the other analysts. We're talking about people being different. Now, we are gathered here and a couple of people who really celebrate these values, appreciating diversity, but we still need to find something that integrates us, something that glues us together. What are some of the core competences that all democratic schools would be well advised to develop, and maybe something, what is the magic powder that holds us together? Okay, we are prepared to appreciate diversity, but what is this magic substance that brings us all together? What's in common other than what's different?
I will say it in one sentence, and I will, in one sentence, what make us, to me, sustainable world in the future, also in the past, and it's not was in the past. But this is the reason that we have a lot of problem. So the major common need to be that different is beautiful. The different is beautiful. And it's mean that it's okay that we will think differently, act differently, and it's not say that if he is different than me, he is my enemy. It's my opportunity. Wow, he think different than me. Let's do things together. And this is also about different is beautiful between culture. I think it's wonderful that we have different culture. We don't want to be that all the world become like there is a Coca-Cola. It's not good. And it's great that he drinks something and I drink different. And we eat different. And we think different. And we believe in different things. This is so important. So that's, I think, the core of education. The core of education that we appreciate the beautiful of different. And this is, I think, the core of what we are thinking in democratic education.
супер. Давайте інтегрувати наші різності.
Now, let's integrate our differences, our diversity. I'm happy to subscribe to each and every word that's been said, but I often hear questions being asked from teachers, from headmasters, but okay, how do we do it? How do we learn to appreciate differences and diversity? How do you manage this? And I have a hammer, but you know what? If someone is holding a hammer, then everything will look like a nail to them. So that is the whole point behind non-violent communication. I think that what I have discovered for myself within this approach, it's not even an approach, it's a worldview. I draw a very powerful source of tools, helping train people to appreciate differences and sociocratic circles, and that's something that I've already addressed. And that's what they've done so well in the Netherlands. And there's a great film, a great video about the sociocratic circles within democratic schools in the Netherlands. Okay, if you just type in sociocratic circles in the Netherlands, I actually know this film. It's been produced by my friends. We will provide you with a link. So we are all different, but time is one. So we need to finish on time because we have more activities scheduled for our second day. I'd like to thank our panelists. We were a little concerned that we had thrown such a philosophical subject and we would not be able to wrap it into this challenging time slot. But actually we pulled it off and we explored it both expeditiously and profoundly at the same time. Thank you. Have a great day.